Welcome, welcome. We are going live here. For some reason, when I set this with YouTube, I set the times, um, it always comes back with not the time that I put in. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong there. But I scheduled this for 11 p.m. tonight, and somehow or another it said it was coming on at 1, but I'm here at my normal time of 11 p.m. Central European time. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you're out there watching live, or if you're watching this on the rerun, again, you have only so much time in your day, and I'm really happy that you took some time to listen to me ramble on. Tonight I want to start out talking about Jeff Beck, who passed away. This is a guitar channel, and it would behoove me to at least discuss him. I didn't do a featured program on him this week like so many others have because, hold on one second, let me turn this off. A little cold in here. I had the floor fan on. It's freezing tonight in Amsterdam. Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, Jeff Beck was somebody that I respected, but I I only know cursory things about him, to be honest with you. Jeff Beck, his Blow by Blow album, I only listened to within, I think, the last 10 years or so for the first time. Hey, welcome, welcome. Good to see you, sir. So I really wasn't, my real first introduction to Jeff Beck, sincerely, was when he did that song "People Get Ready" with Rod Stewart. I really thought that that was a great rendition of that song. I really like it. To this day, it's one of my favorite songs by Rod Stewart. And Jeff Beck's licks behind it had a quality to it that, you know, it not pretty like Santana. Santana and Prince and other guys like that play really pretty. I was very lucky to see Jeff Beck 5 times. Oh, and just last year oh, that's really great, man. Yeah, you are fortunate. I envy you that. I would have loved to have seen that Jeff Beck Johnny Depp show. I've seen a few clips of it on YouTube, but I would really like to have been there. But still, Jeff Beck is a founding father. Hey, hello, hello, welcome, welcome. After got him. Oh, okay. Yeah, man. Blow by Blow was my first introduction to him, and that's because he was playing the Les Paul. And if you really wanted to get a taste for that 70s, early 70s Les Paul song, there's two albums that I could recommend. Blow by Blow is the first one, and the second one is by ZZ Top, particularly the first track on their debut album, Brown Sugar. Just quintessential Les Paul tones. If you want to kind of get a feel for what those were all about, put a pin in that, because that's going to be relevant in the discussion we're going to have later on. But yeah, I recently voted as in the top 3, I think #1 guitarist of all time by Rolling Stone magazine. You can, take that list for however you feel about it, but he was a pioneer of the genre. He was one of the guys that described as guitar player, yeah, as the guitar player's guitar player, yeah, and he's been often described, and it's true because his his abilities were far beyond just rock. He could play jazz, he could play blues, he played any style really that he was called upon to play, and that's what made him the guitar player, because there wasn't any guitar player of any particular genre or style that didn't have respect for Jeff Beck. And so, therefore, yeah, I definitely do believe that that's the reason why he made it on Rolling Stone's list where he is at. So, yeah, nothing, his early history, as you guys should know, he was recommended by Jimmy Page to go play with Cream. And uh, he obviously he got fired like mid tour because his perfectionist attitude. And greetings, welcome. We're talking about Jeff Beck. And a volatile, quote unquote, temper made that a very short lived gig. But then he went on to do his own thing, which is how it should be. I mean, if you notice, Cream was just a revolve, just like John Mayer's Blues Breakers. It was a revolving door of lead guitars. And that's not the kind of creative situation that a guy like Jeff Beck was suited for, and it was a good thing that he left, in my opinion. And the result of that can be seen by his work subsequently. And he will be missed, and got a lot of respect for him. Again, like I said, because he took the American bluesman's music, he mixed it with a lot of Gene Vincent, because there was some jazz in there, He mixed it with a lot of different guys who were popular at that time, and he created his own thing that propelled the genre. Frank Zappa said, if you stay mainstream, you're never going to push the envelope on whatever genre it is that you're into musically. And you need guys like Jeff Beck, in order to push that envelope, and propel the genre. I don't know. Yes. I don't know if we there's a fine line between being the virtuoso type, that just the shredders, which, as I've said before, unless you're really going somewhere or you got something rhythmically there that's interesting that I can hold on to, it's kind of boring. Jeff Beck, you know, he wasn't that. He was interesting. It was whatever he played. It was interesting. It was something to listen to. Jeff wasn't afraid of trying new things, just pushing boundaries. Yeah, and that's what Frank was talking about. A well-known boundary pusher himself. Zappa was saying that you have to push boundaries. I sometimes look at myself, and my commercial, life musically that I've had. I've never pushed any boundaries, I don't think. But the times that I felt that I were some of the more rewarding musically things that I've done. So I can dig that sentiment. Yeah. So that's that on Jeff Beck. Just wanted to open up tonight by showing my respect to him and to his family, and just a great musician. We've lost another one, and that's all I really can say. The title of tonight's show, if you guys saw, is an interesting one. This one may get me in trouble. People may not like me for this one. I don't know. We'll see. Is I finally found my dream guitar ... of this month. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you go into YouTube, into the search, and you type in I finally found my dream guitar, you will get inundated with just, lines and lines and lines of videos of people talking about I finally found my dream guitar. And you have to ask yourself, well, being the cynical guy that I am sometimes, is all this for real? Because there are some guys, I'm not going to call anybody out. You can take the time to look for yourself. But if you're familiar with YouTube guitar channels, you know that there are some guys out there, it just seems like every other month, Uh, it's the likes button. Yeah. It just seems like every month they've found their dream guitar, or this is the guitar, this is the best guitar I've ever found, or this is the best. You guys know what I'm talking about. It gets to be. Yeah, let me get myself a little more pillow here. Not getting any younger. Um, that you guys have seen this, and am I the only one who kind of now? There are some people that I truly do believe, and you can tell by the production quality of their videos. They're the guys that shot. They just got their iPhone and they shot. Hey, I finally one, and I want to share this to the world and let everybody know. But that seems to be, a remarkably small portion of a lot of the more staged, well crafted YouTubers. Again, I understand. You have to come up with content and things to talk about. But I just wonder how many times you can recycle that stale, almost meme-ish phrase. I found my dream guitar. You know, or this is the one guitar. This is the number one. I wouldn't do that because I don't know if it's my age. I question it. First of all, is there really such thing as a dream guitar? I really, sure, there is a guitar right now that I would love to have. I've talked about it here on our live streams before. Is that 1975 Les Paul Custom that Barry has down there at Dirkwood Music for $6,500. I would love to have that guitar. It's got somebody had taken out the T top. I think at that time T tops, yeah, and put in DiMarzio. So those are the original '70s DiMarzios in there as well. Which I had a guitar. I had a Gibson. I do believe my Gold Top Classic. I ended up putting '70s DiMarzios in the neck and in the bridge position. I loved it. It had a unique sound to it. DiMarzios sound like DiMarzios. Super distortions sound like super distortions, but boy, is it a good sound when you want to reach out for it. But really, seriously, I can't see myself. It's a desirable guitar, but is it a dream guitar? No, I don't think that I have a dream guitar. I don't know if I've ever had, per se, that would be my dream guitar. Um, I don't know how you guys feel about that, so let's open the discussion regarding that and see how you feel. But I've never had a dream car. I've had just guitars that I've wanted. I still do. I thought that buying a different guitar would make a better guitar player. Yeah, that's kind of the typical sentiment too. Is that, well, that next guitar is going to make me a better guitar player, and it has because of influences, somebody you saw, or just a notion that you have that just a gut feeling, I guess, that you have or something like that. Yeah, that happens to all of us. That's common, but that's a desire thing, and that you didn't dream of that guitar. Sales and marketing. Yeah, yeah, of course. It all boils, and we're going to talk about that in the third topic tonight. Never had a dream guitar as such, just playing my first Gibson. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, that's the sales and marketing part, the desirability, the marketing hype. And so, no, even in that regard, thinking that buying a Les Paul is going to make you a better guitar player, that wasn't your dream guitar. Maybe you didn't even consider a Les Paul, like me, until later on in life. I always liked Telecasters, and even with that, a good Telecaster was a good Telecaster. I didn't have a dream one. I've been around broadcasters. I've been around early 50 Telecasters living in Japan. Because as I've told you, Japanese music stores are like freaking guitar museums, seriously. And you can see some stuff come through that would blow your mind. You'd be like, wow, am I actually holding this? But it wasn't a dream guitar of mine. I was like, okay, I know what the original was like. I got a basic feel for what it is and what it sounds like in my head now. Let me extrapolate that to something modern that is, made a little bit better, or and not and or, but in my case, certainly more affordable. And so, but that was that. It didn't drive me to have a dream, per se, a dream guitar. There wasn't something there that as when I was 7 years old, I used to lay in bed and dream about a Gibson Les Paul. No, I never, no, I never had that kind of thought run through my head. And so when I see all these dream guitar videos and whatnot, again, I just feel as though when you do that, if you do it once and then 2 or 3 years later, I come back and you're still jamming that thing and that's still your dream and you're so happy, then I'm gonna buy it. But initially when you first put that out, the cynic in me is going to say, give it a few months. You're going to have your next. Even one guy said that on one of his videos, and he seems to be a really nice guy. But he came out with a video 3 years ago saying, "This is it. I'm never buying another guitar." And then he proceeds to show off a Strat that he just felt was it, and he was all set now because he's got the perfect this, that. And now 3 years later, that man has been through more guitars. He's been through more wood than the Playboy Mansion. Okay, so come on, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it, and it 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 begins to sound like a marketing ploy to me. People do it with cars, chainsaws, shoes, just the same concept, putting the dip lipstick on it. Yeah, that's weird because, I'm not into tennis shoes. I own one pair of trainers, as they're called, and that's it. I really dig Spanish leather boots and stuff, so that's kind of my thing. But I'm not a very tall guy, so I'm naturally going to gravitate towards wearing boots. But there are guys out there who feel that way about the dream tennis shoe, I suppose. That would be a very weird. I could wrap my head around a dream guitar, of course, because of my predilections, than a dream tennis shoe, but sure, absolutely purses. You know, I knew this one girl in Singapore, and she spent all her money on designer handbags. It's like, my God, how many designer handbags do you have? And she said, well, and I said, what do you wait for they go on sale down at the store? No, 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 no. She says, I don't buy the stuff in the store. That's for suckers. The stuff at the retail store. So we're talking about Gucci and Prada. No, I have a buyer who gets it directly from the Vuitton house. And I was like, holy crap. That's how you get the ones that there's only a few of, she told me. I was like, God, wow, okay. So, but did she, as a young girl, did she dream of having these things? I just don't think so. I don't know. I think as we grow older, our aspirations change. I know that much. I can apply that to myself. And so, subsequently, over time, we are going to have a different view of what works. I just did a video talking about the ES35 and the Les Paul, and which one, as an older player, had more appeal to me. And of course, it was the 335 because of its weight distribution and things like that. If I was younger, it would have probably been the Les Paul. And actually, though, Peahan Shitsu wrote to me and said, asked the question, well, which one are you more of the two are you more comfortable with? And I had to admit it was the Les Paul because it was more familiar. I found the Les Paul to be more familiar to me because I just got the 335, even though the 335 was ultimately a more comfortable thing to play. But the Les Paul felt more comfortable. So, which, again, I my viewpoint of things. Excuse me, my cat. Sorry, guys. Got a little cat highway going on here again. I just the marketing thing and all the things that go along with it, the changing of my age, how I've gotten older and perceive things. All of those have led me to just come to the conclusion that that number one guitar is really a moving target. It's just a moving target. Dig that. And I don't think when you're young, and these guys saying they're, I guess they're young guys, so I gotta give them, and for that I give them all a pass. There is one older guy who really should know better, and I got a lot of respect for him as a session guitar player. But I swear that man, every week he has a "this is it" guitar, or "this is the one to have," or "this is the one you should be playing," and it gets a little stale. And then my dream guitar becomes a meme. It is. It's really memeable at this point, and you begin to question, that person's integrity. I admit, though, I have a dream amp. Well, okay, all right. There, we've hit on something interesting. A dream amp. A dream amp is something that I too could say is more. Uh, uh, it moves more out of the desirability into, I guess, the dream, the aspirational, which is what all this is based on, as was pointed out. Sales and marketing, aspirational. Um, Something that's aspirational, yeah, amps. That would be something for me. You know, I like Laney amps. There is a couple of new Laney amps out there that I didn't know about it 10 years, so it can't be. I guess it really can't be there. Again, it can't be a dream amp, but it is something that I would really like, something that's strongly desired to me, almost to the point where yeah, it would be. It almost is aspirational. It would not be incorrect for me to say that it would be a dream to have that. I guess is that the closest thing that I can come to that sentiment, I suppose. And it comes down to amps, not guitars. So yeah, I guess I can dig this. I give most of all those people a pass, but do keep an eye out for that. And I'm serious. Just type into your YouTube search. I finally found my dream guitar, and just scroll through that and come to your own conclusions about it, about what you think about everybody who does that. You know, are they being legitimate? You can kind of, and again, and then go through a particular channel and see how many times that channel pops up, in a certain length of time, having, this is my dream, or this is my number one, or this is the one that you should be getting. No. Uh, I think that gets into hype, and it may draw a lot of views, and it may get you somewhere, but I couldn't do it because I couldn't sit here in front of you guys and say that this is it. This is my dream guitar, because you guys would know, you'd smell the BS on that one a mile away, because you know me too well. That I like Phil McKnight, because he said something the other day that I was like, yeah, that's my same thing. He says I don't get attached to any guitar, really. Uh, at the end of the day, if I got to do something, I'm going to make some moves, and if it involves something like a guitar to get something better, I'm going to do that. I I I I do like to keep at least one uh, in permanent rotation that I like, that's comfortable to play and that I can write with, and is not something that I can, I don't have to be super careful with. And that really has become my Les Paul. That 59, I'm giving it its own buckle rash. If you guys saw that 75 custom that Barry has down there that I was talking about earlier, saw the buckle rash on the back of that. I'm working on that on my 59, but that's okay because it's a guitar it's a keeper. It's something that I had that kind of attachment to. But if I had to move it on for something, if I could put a deal together and it involved me having to move it on, I'd move it on in a heartbeat. It's just the way it is. So yeah, don't have that kind of thing. Never had it. I really wonder if it. I don't know what that is. I don't doubt the people who say it that's their dream guitar in most cases. A lot fewer than you think, but I do believe that most of the people who say it. My Telecaster 72 Mexican is my play better almost always too hard. Yeah. Well, that's another thing too when you start getting into the quality of things in manufacturing locations, things like that. But you will come across, that's a different thing too, because you're just talking about coming across a guitar that, if I read that correctly, that fits for you, that works for you. Well, that's different than a dream. That was just luck. Because I've been through a lot of guitars, documented a lot, as you see, not even close. The Guitarista, my friend Colin over there on the Guitarista's channel, he just got finished stating that he bought 30 guitars last year. I was like, holy crap. That is a huge amount of guitars, but his reviews are great, so I'm glad he does it. So shout out to you, Colin, for doing that, man, for us, taking one for the team like that. But again, none of that was dream or anything like that. That was just let's check this out and see what this is all about. That Telecaster was definitely a lucky find. Yeah, that's why I said they're. And I mentioned him because of all those 32 guitars. The majority of them weren't keepers. And also, well, he's got to move them on anyway, because that's how it is. Once you get into this YouTube game, you're moving this, you're selling this so that you can buy this, so that you can review this, and that's one way of doing it. There's a couple of ways, not a few, but that is the way to do it, the major way of doing it. And all of us do it to some extent, but and to some level. But his level, well, he started out as a hobbyist. He said himself he had 62 guitars. He didn't put his money into anything else but guitars. So he started out his channel at a strong point. A lot of people aren't so lucky. I started out at not as strong a point as that, but a relatively strong point myself. Anyway, I mentioned him, and I mentioned that because again, he also mentioned the fact that Les Pauls did not gain him money. He lost money. He was hinting towards that he actually lost money on the Les Pauls, but that's another subject for another time. Yeah, all that stuff, none of those were dream guitars to him. And so again, there is a guy who rolls through a lot of guitars. Most of them were keepers, and the ones that he did find, it was a luck of the draw. So if you're fortunate enough and get lucky enough to find a keeper, I really do believe it comes down to dealer. Every major guitar that I've bought recently, and quite a few for the last 20 years, have been with Barry Witt down at Dirk Witt Music in Utrecht here, or in the beginning when he was here in Amsterdam. And I think it's having a good dealer who gets good stuff is a good place to start. This is a separate subject that I should talk about another time, but it just popped into my head on this train of thought we're having here. Is that, really, again, ordering online is hit and miss. Hey, welcome. And you don't know what you're going to get when you're ordering online. It's really a dice roll. And but when you do, if you're fortunate enough to deal with a dealer, then, and the reason I bring this is thinking about calling over Guitaristas again, because he was having problems with a few of the ones that he ordered. It was really hit and miss. And so, aspirational and dream guitars, if I hadn't gone down to Barry's shop and picked up that 75 custom, strummed it a bit, and got to know it a little bit, that, unless I had that exposure, it wouldn't have been something on my radar. So that's also something to think about. It's got to be on your radar. I guess if you're at a young age, if it's on your radar, say you're, a Slash fan and you're like, this is like 1989 and you're 10 years old and you see him playing that Les Paul, which wasn't a Les Paul, which wasn't a Gibson. And all your life you say, hey, when I grow up, I want to get a guitar like Slash. Okay. I guess that's the only way in my mind that falls into a dream guitar. And I never really had that. Prince maybe with his Mad Cat, but I ended up playing a Telecaster instead, so and going with that. So there's that. All right, next topic. Let me move my notes over. So, I want to, if you guys don't mind. Oh, by the way, again, here I am rambling again. How is everybody tonight? How is everybody doing out there? I see we have 10 people watching live. I've got 10 people watching and 5 likes. Somehow the math of that doesn't work out. So if you haven't hit that like button, please do so. There we go, 6. How is everybody doing? I hope you guys had a good week. Here in Amsterdam, it has been pouring and hailing. I feel sorry for the tourists who can imagine all good. Yeah, I'm glad to see you guys are all good. Yeah, everybody's checking in, all good. Yeah, here in Amsterdam, I feel sorry for the tourists because, imagine I'm going to spend a romantic weekend in Amsterdam. Oh, all good. Good. Good to see everybody's doing good. And, and you look out the window and it's pissing down hail. East Coast, all good. Locking it down on the East Coast. Thank you so much for joining us here. And I just look out the window and I look down at them. I'm on the 4th floor, so I'm looking down and they look so miserable. Cool in New York City. Good to hear. Thank you for coming tonight. And so, yeah, it's kind of sad. For me, my only one obligation to go out is to walk the dog. I can always eat some toast or something like that. I don't need to eat luxuriously. But even she doesn't want to go out. I'm like, come on, we gotta go. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I'm feeling kind of good here in my dog bed. I think I'm gonna stay here for a minute. Why don't you go shoot a YouTube video or play guitar or something instead? So yeah, I can't even get my dog to go out this weekend. So that's how miserable it was here, and cold too. Like I said, I just had the floor heater on in here, but it makes too much noise for this, so I will sit here and suffer a little bit. My studio room here gets cold. Dog knows what's up. Yeah, my dog was always like that. In Japan, when it rained, she wouldn't go out. I always wondered what it was about the rain. When we got to Singapore, she began to dig the rain a little bit better, and then when her and I got here, I can take her out mostly. But still, if it's raining, she has second thoughts about it. It's funny. I was digging into a topic to talk about tonight. And I was thinking about Jeff Beck because he passed away, and I was thinking about that Blow by Blow album and the Les Paul. And we often talk about Les Pauls here, but and Fenders and other guitars here, but we very rarely talk about both of them from a historical perspective. Now I'm going to lose a lot of people here, I realize, so if you want to check out now, I wouldn't blame you. But if you hang in there, I think you might find out something interesting, something to think about. Again, this is what I'll put under your tools to fight off the hype. If you have this knowledge, this background, this history in your head, no matter what these guitar companies throw at you, no matter what they say or do, you always know, hey, I know your history and I know this, that, and the other, and I know when this happened, and I'm calling BS. And I was looking at Fenders, and during the 60s, Leo Fender started his company in California, Corona, California, Fullerton, California, one or two, I'm sorry, I always confused the two. But maybe it started in Corona and then moved to Fullerton or vice versa. But in any case, California, basically Southern California, where I'm from. And he was really gearing his instruments at that time towards a certain genre. You have to understand something that I will remind you that at that time in the United States, and we touch upon this here every now and then, that most people were buying their guitars through mail order catalogs. There were instrument shops, but they sold brass instruments, violins, cellos, they sold tubas, banjos, and they may had an electric guitar or acoustic guitar, more or less likely than electric. During that time period. And most people had to purchase their instruments via mail catalog. Sound familiar? It's kind of like buying through the internet today. Except that you're buying through the postage service. And I'm old enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember blue chip stamps. Where you had a booklet and you got at the grocery store, you got a certain amount of stamps. You filled up this booklet, you go to the blue chip store, turn in the booklet, and you could get something for. There was a lot of that kind of commerce going on until the internet came along. All that stuff died away. But really, it was a expensive thing to buy a Gibson or a Fender. Gibsons were going for 240 range, Fenders were 189, and that's in 1950s money. So you're talking about over adjusting inflation, you're talking over $2,000 or more today. To over 2,000, over 2,400 certainly. And so these are professional players that are going to be buying these things. These aren't going to be, the kids in the bedroom playing these guitars like you have today. And amongst professional players, actually, Fenders were not popular. They weren't. And the reason being is because being in California, Leo Fender said, you know what, I am going to corner the surf rock market. The Beach Boys, Tom and Jerry, you name the 60s group, the Monkees, things like that. We're going to corner this market. So he designed his guitars really with surfboard designs in mind. He had surfboards in mind. Some of the colors that were chosen, especially the early 60s colors, were around surfboards. So, being a professional jazz guitarist in New York, these bright Lake Placid blue Strats and Telecasters were not something that was a guitar that you wanted to gig. No, it was more towards your Gibsons that people wanted to gig. And one of the reasons why the Gibsons had their popularity. They were the favorite choice, as I was saying, amongst the players, the professional players at that time. Now, if we go across the pond to the UK, to the 1960s, and we're talking about that boiling cauldron of American blues coming over and skiffle and a few other things influencing, which turned into British rock, British invasion rock. They were in actually worse shape than the Americans. Because, I mean, at least in the case of ordering a Dan Electro, yeah, it was a cheaply, it was as I said, particle board guitar, but it stayed in relatively good tune, and it was more reliable than what was available to the British at that time. Also, those bright colors appealed to common folks because they were colors for cars. Yeah, you had all of that stuff. Remember, the 50s and 60s, the cars and the guitars and the houses and a lot of those things were all tied in design-wise because it was the jet age. It was the mark. We were moving out of World War II. We're in the baby boomer generation. We're building. We're making the Jetsons' future. And so the colors were vivid, and the designs were what they were, which is why in modern guitar designs, there's very few new designs. There's just riffs on the stuff that came out, those innovations during the 50s, because talking about really brilliant people like Les Paul, who, this guy, I don't want to get into Les Paul, but really dig into his background. Houses were a lot cheaper though. Yeah, and think about that too. Think about that $249 for that Les Paul, and think about how much it costs to buy a car, how much a house payment was, a lot of those things. And you kind of get an idea why, if you were a pro player and you were up against that Lake Placid Blue Strat, and maybe a 335 or a Les Paul, this would be more of the choice for you for that time period. Jumping over the pond to the UK again is where that popularity really starts to begin for these guitars, these particular guitars, because it was discovered when you plug a Les Paul into a Marshall or a Hi-Watt or into AC30, something happens sonically. Something happens. It was really Mike Bloomfield in 1966, and this is prior to Clapton and the Blues Breaker album, that really got Clapton and a lot of those other cats the ball rolling on looking at the Les Paul seriously because of that sound that was created, that magic that happens with the Les Paul and certain amps. So they were considered, however, to be the Rolex of guitars. The Rolex of guitars for those guys. And again, even though you had this proliferation of young players like Beck, Clapton, Page, I could go on Townsend, over in the States, Hendrix, but that's a kind of a different thing. But a young Santana, you really saw that as a luxury. It wasn't something that was, oh, I'll just run down the street and get myself a Les Paul. No, you had to be at a certain level. But because of guys being on a certain level, exposing these guitars out to the masses and other musicians, that's when the Les Paul really kind of surpassed what was going on over at Fender at that time. But of course, you have like famously Hendrix and his Stratocasters, but honestly speaking, that was at that moment in time, it was not the norm. It was actually him and a few other cats who kind of expanded the Fenders out into the rock world. Townsend moving over. God, again, it's late and my memory starts to go on me. Ron Wood of Rolling Stones. A lot of cats playing them. You go through the list. That's how Fender began to become on the ascendancy. But really, it was the Les Paul. And so, you know, it's interesting to me that there was that kind of fight going on. I got my Epiphonius 3035 tablet. We have a minor setup. Yeah. We'll beat that dog to death here. But again, if you want to go for 335, I would go with the Epiphone inspired bar series. Um, I would do that. Yeah, but it's interesting to me that there was that kind of competition. So Fender was really trying to capture the West Coast players, and Gibson was trying to capture everybody else, presumably the East Coast on. And those guitars, not just in America, but over here in Europe and the UK, really, depending upon whether it was a Fender or a Gibson, really defined a lot of ways the genre of the music that it was in. Uh, Surf music, and the popularity of that, and prior to that, of course, the Telecaster and country music really took country music by storm. The Telecaster was and still is the go-to. So, they had that going for it. But the Gibson had the rock thing going for it. It had the jazz thing going for it. It had the blues thing going through it with B.B. King and a lot of Muddy Waters, a lot of those guys playing Gibsons. So it was a battle there. It was a battle, and Gibson always really had that edge. Now people will say once you get into the '70s and Fender went to CBS and Gibson went in the direction that they went, the Norlin era, that they both fell apart and that they both lost their shine and luster. Particular Gibsons, people will say. But that's not actually true. Um, the '70s guitar players, the reason that they started buying those '50s Les Pauls and Gibsons is, again, because they found the stuff that was coming out at that period when they were in the shops to be inferior, because they were. They were made by people who had just got hired and put on the line, mixed in with some experienced people who decided to make the move, and it was hit and miss. And because of that, that's when the whole vintage thing and that's when the whole desirability was really kicked off for Gibson. They never really lost their edge. Um, Edward Van Halen really took the Strat and propelled it, but equally and not too far behind that, maybe that's we're talking about 79, 78, 79, coming in with Appetite for Destruction in '87 / turning it again around again for Gibson. So there's always been this kind of thing with historically. I never really thought about it, and I put all this in context because it's funny how people will fight and argue and get into each other's faces about vintage Fenders. And the truth of the matter is that for the majority, they were not a desirable guitar with mainstream players. Parker Fly is the best stock tie ever made, but they look weird. So yeah. Oh, the Parkers. Yeah. Yeah, I used to look at those Parkers and think the same thing too. Yeah, dig that. But Fenders, don't. Where was I going with that? Really, with Fenders, and now the prices that they're asking for those, of course, they're nowhere near the '50s Gibsons, but they're up there. That they're asking for vintage Fenders. Always keep in the back of your mind that these were guitars that were really just Coast guitars for the most part, for a long time in their infancy as a company, and they were not desired by quote unquote professional guitar players. Of course, the fact of that and the fact that going into the 70s and 80s, a lot of those went on the market. They were given away. I'll be frank with you. You get Strats, 60s and 70s Strats back when in the 80s when I was a kid for not a lot of money. I really wish I had bought one, but again, I wasn't into Strats. But they weren't desirable, and then again, the resurgence came along, and it's just been like this. So I thought I would share that bit of history with you guys. Just keep that in mind. Again, what's one man's ceiling is another man's floor. I guess is the you could take one of the takeaways from what I'm talking about tonight. Those fenders that everybody give their eye tooth now. In the beginning, they weren't desirable for they because they were, I guess you could literally say in some ways they were ahead of their time. Uh, and it really took the rest of the world and music taste to catch up to Fenders. And whereas Gibsons, they were kind of along from the ride from the beginning and of music. If you get back into the late big band era, which did extend into the 60s. And guys like Les Paul and other players of that ilk, that was their go-to. They weren't, it wasn't. It was only in country music that you were seeing the Fenders, and that's where they got there. That's really with the Telecaster in country music. That's where they made their bread and butter at first, and so there's that. 70 Strats were mod platform in the 80s. Everyone but DeMar says, yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were. That is no crap. I don't think you guys can really, and I don't believe that they're, and as a result of that, I really question how many of those 70 Strats that you'll see out there floating around are all have all their original parts. And I'm not versed well enough in Fenders to be able to make that. And Gibsons, I could probably do it. But with Fenders, no, I'm not versed enough to be able to eyeball those kind of things. So there's that too. There's a lot of Strats that are being sold out there on the market as being vintage Strats, but they've been modded. And I know it because I was part of the generation of the guys that were buying them and modding them. They weren't desirable. They really weren't. They were mod platforms. I'm not saying they were the Harley Benz, but of the day, but they were in that category. They were pretty doggone close, and that was just the vibe around them in the '80s. Yeah, we were modding '70s Strats and Tellys. So. Again, and the reason that because the CBS Tellys and Strats and Jaguars and all their other models really took a hard turn in the '70s because of construction. And it was really hit and miss. And again, it was another example of how a brand reputation can stick for a while. Strat is my favorite guitar, and my '84 is modded with DiMaggio. Yeah, everybody is kicking in. Gotta have those DiMaggios, man. That was the thing. And you can tell because you talk to guys my age and older, and they'll say, it's like in the '70s. Again, it's one of the reason that's that '75 Les Paul Custom that I'm so enamored with, that I'm trying to figure out which one of my kidneys I'm going to sell for. That has, super distortions. The original, from the time that they put in back at the time, because that was the thing. Those pickups weren't hot enough. They weren't hot enough. They really wanted to push, that's why '60s rock and '70s rock, it's '60s rock, they just took it up a notch and they just kicked it in louder, hotter pickups, the amps, of course, really modding those, making those plexis going into the '80s with the Appetite for Destruction amp that nobody to this day seems to be able to find, Marshall. And, and then, just doing things to the circuitry to just give them all a little bit of an extra oomph, and that was the thing. And so, yeah, everybody was modding the crap out of their guitars to get that extra, you know, little bit of oomph out of it, that extra volume out of it, you know, loud. Loud is good. That's where the whole joke, you turn it up to 11. You know, our amps actually go to 11. You guys know that one. And that's where all that comes from, is the 70s. You know, let's make it louder. And that's because, again, the PA systems in stadiums sucked. Imagine playing Dodger Stadium in the 70s with, 70s PA systems. It's just really god awful. If you're sitting in the front of the audience, you're probably golden. If you're back in the nosebleed seats, it was just echoes. You were, I think I hear, is that Yellow Brick Road? I can't tell. So they had to pump it louder too for that reason. It was one of the reasons the Beatles stopped touring, famously, is because they couldn't hear themselves when they were playing in those stadiums, because the screaming was so loud. They're up there on stage with the amps that they couldn't hear themselves. It wasn't sufficient. So that was that whole move in the 70s to louder. And that's why a lot of people were modding. And then, again, Van Halen came along and really, I can't tell you how influential Van Halen 1 is. 70s amps and pickups were all about volume. Yes, that's what I'm saying here. Yes. All about volume. It was all about it. Does anyone know what Seymour Duncan Cephalver PFs were made out of history for the when? Seymour Duncan PS were made for Seymour Duncan's. Duncan was working in London, and he was working for somebody, and then he started doing his own windings. 70s again. All there was, I don't know if that answers your question, but I will say that note that all boutique winders, Seymour Duncan, DiMarzio, the founders, really the godfathers of that, that all came about in the mid 70s, 74 on. That's when they started doing that. Again, because the demand for louder is better. And it's funny to me, again, like I said, so keep that in mind when you're looking at Fenders, that first of all, like I told you before, you shouldn't be looking at vintage gear anyway. Not unless you have a hard-on for it. That 75, by the way, I know what you're thinking. Well, what about that 75 custom? Well, it's not vintage yet, is it? It won't be vintage until 2030. Then it'll be vintage. So I got 7 years to to dig up 6,500. Yeah, shit, in 7 years, I think it'll be 10 grand easy. It'll be north of 10 grand. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Again, let's clear through this fog of time that have laid all these traps that these companies now are aware of, because they are guitar players as well that work in these companies, They're not all pencil pushers, and they use it to exploit you and to think something that's not true. These were not, again, the Brits got into the Gibsons, and only the top-notch players. Bobby Lane, down on the Blackheath, he wasn't buying a Gibson Les Paul. He wasn't. Well, maybe on the Blackheath, because that's a good area, but you know what I mean. Your common day-to-day guy, just like the Americans, they weren't buying them. And in that battle, at that particular time, Gibson was eating Fender's lunch, except for in the country genre. That's really where that would save Fender's butt, and then the emergence of surf music. So there's that. Just something I would throw out there for you guys to chew upon And again, like I said, knowledge is power. When you know that they're lying to you, when they're telling you, Fender has a rich history, they were always, no, 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 no. They had a genre and a market. They had a lane that they were in, and it wasn't until much later that those lanes began to intertwine with their competitors. They were really in a lane because, again, when you're looking at those prices, you're only talking about a small pool of guys at that period of time who had the cash in order to buy something like that. So if you're a Leo Fender, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to try to go for these guys. That's just the marketing edge of it. And so he really hung to the West Coast, and it paid off in a big way. I will have to look into how it crept into country western music. I suspect that Chet Atkins had a lot to do with it. If I really dig into that a lot, but in any case, there's that. That's another story for another time. But yeah, guys, chew on that. I thought you would find that interesting, as I do, getting to that history of it. Yeah, man, mod platforms. Absolutely. My God, we were modding that. I mean, it was with the exception of like Steve DeMont, who had that '68 Les Paul Custom. No, he wasn't modding that. To this day, I'm sure he still has that guitar if he's still with us. And yeah, he wasn't on that, but there were other guitars that you just did that to. As you got to be a little bit more advanced, not the beginner guys, but you know, you did that and you heard about that and you saw that. Greetings, welcome for coming. Welcome for coming this evening. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming, I should say, not welcome for coming. It's getting late, guys. Speaking of getting late, let's see, where are we at? Okay, all right. 15 people watching, and I only see 6 likes. Somehow the math of that just does not work for me, guys. Hit that like button. Give me a little bit of love here. I don't know. It's a psychology of the like button. Like, do I really want to reach and hit that? Yeah. Do something for me. You know. I'm not a Mary Splendor, so I'm not good looking. So I can't do that. Yeah, so I'll have to be charming as best that I can to get those likes. There we go. Now they're coming up. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. Now, these are just the thoughts that go through my head because, I run a YouTube channel and I like the historical YouTube channels. I like 5 Watt World. I like it when they get into stuff and dig into the history. And I find it fascinating because, you can break through a lot of the myths of things by knowing the history of it. And if you can break through the myths, then the marketing won't work on you. The hype and all those things, you can pretty much well cut through them, and you can see them for what they are. And so when a guy tells you that this is his dream guitar and you should buy it, or this is my number one guitar and you should buy it, or this is it, this is what you should be buying, then you have a little bit of background to know it's BS. I got a 58 Flying V. Oh, you got a Flying V. Woo, those things are rare and hard to find, my friend. I guess the hype. No, 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 no. No, there are some guitars. That's not hype. That's desirability because the Epiphone Flying V's are well regarded, which is something. Even the guitar snobs, even the Gibson guitar snobs, will give it up on the Epiphone Flying V's, and they didn't make a lot of them. So if you got one, that's great. Particularly the Joe Bonamassa Flying V. That one I think was his most successful run that he's done. Out of the 10 that he's done to date, that one is most desirable and sold out in a minute. So no, there's certain guitars that are just out there. I want a double neck. I want a 12-string, 6-string electric. I would like to have one of those. If Epiphone came out with one, I would jump on it in a minute. I put that in the. You don't have to have a kind of guitar, but it's just damn cool to have. And Flying V's, double necks, and a couple other designs definitely fall in that. So good on you on that. No hype on that one. That's actually a score, because those really are hard to find from from a collectability standpoint. It is freezing in here, guys, and my tea is now iced tea that I've been sipping on here. So that is all the signs that it is time to call it quits. My last video that I did here on the channel was the giveaway for this shim reverb. We did the drawing and put that video up. The winner was Future Trading. Oh my goodness, I bang my guitar on stuff as it is. Can't imagine having two necks. Yeah, man, that's the only thing is I wonder because I had that one. If you saw the video, I was holding that Gibson, that 70s Gibson that Barry has. And that was my second time in my life holding a double neck guitar. And actually, I was pleased. That one, if you look at the video, so go to the visit to Dirk Witt music shop video and look at that double neck. That thing was light. I was surprised on how light. If I could get a double neck that's light like that one, that thing was barely 7 pounds. If I can get one like that, I'm totally in. I'm in on it. My biggest fear of it is the weight. The Flying V, if you put that sucker on your lap and you play it like this, that actually ergonomically that kind of works for me. So yeah, that's another thing about Flying V's I like. Labit here. Hey, Kingdom Funding, you won. You are the winner. Kingdom Funding, you won the drawing. Did you know that? Look at the video. But this is yours, sir. I drew your name out of the hat and put the video up. And yeah, your name got pulled out of the hat, sir. You are the owner of Moore Shimverb. So what I need you to do everybody give Kingdom Funding a congrats on that one. We'll be doing other drawings here for other stuff down the line, but this one, Kingdom Funding one. So you need to shoot me an email that I can contact you at down in this description of this one. Or go back to the video with the original, with the drawing winner on it. So the video that I just put out today, and put an email in there that you're comfortable with putting out like that. I will contact you, and I will mail this out to you, PDQ. So congratulations, Kingdom Funding, for winning. That it was. I'm glad you came around. Because you better, Kingdom Fun, you better hit that like button tonight. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, Joy, it's a good pedal. I used it, it was the reverb pedal that I used on a few songs on the album that I finished last year, or late last year. So it's a good one. I only use the spring reverb on it. I'm a spring reverb freak. Now that I've got this Hall of Fame, it was as good of a spring reverb on this Hall of Fame, but the only thing that gave the Hall of Fame the edge and got the Shimverb off my board was the Hall of Fame has more usable presets, plates, and rooms and things like that. Yeah, and and so that's the reason why that was replaced on my pedal, but only for that reason. Has nothing to do with the quality of it. Yeah, great. So it's all yours, sir. So shoot that email off to me, and I will get that to you. And congratulations again. Yeah, guys. A lot of fun here that I have every Sunday night. I'm glad that you showed up. I was afraid because the reverb algorithm was showing me with the wrong starting time. Even though I put in the right one, I don't know what's up with that, but everybody showed up anyway. coming up this week, I have no friggin' idea what I'm going to cover. I really don't. I shall think of something interesting to share with you. I don't have any new guitars, so it won't be anything new as far as that's concerned. Um, but I will. There are some things that I do have here that I do want to talk about, so I'll think about that, and that'll be coming up either Friday. So I'm kind of playing around with Sunday as being my release date. Though YouTube says that you really shouldn't make it such a constant date, you should shift it around. So Friday or Saturday, I will have something for you, or Sunday at the latest. Enjoy your week. Take care of yourselves. Oh, Mickey, I heard about that strike, or not the strike, that the post service in the UK, they couldn't send out any international packages. And I was thinking to myself, man, Mickey is just not going to have any luck at all sending stuff out. I appreciate it, but it seems like the world is conspiring against us. I laughed when I saw that. I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, that's funny. Post office is awful. Well, I lived in the UK for 3 years. I mentioned the Blackheath. I've told you guys the stories. I lived in the Blackheath, right next to Greenwich Park there. And I would have stuff sent, and it was really a crapshoot. It really was, guys. I can't describe to you, Mickey just said it was awful, so I can say it too. It was awful, the postal service there. And one time I came home and found that somebody had signed for a package for me with a circle with an X in the middle of it. And I was like, who the hell of my neighbors is this? Come to find out, it was the gardener. He was literally functionally illiterate. He couldn't read or write, and that was his signature, a rough circle with an X in it. But going down to the post office to sort that out, well, was a pain, and it discouraged me the time I was there to really have anything mailed to me, because I really didn't know if I was going to get it or not. So that's a memory of the UK I have. So yeah, dig that. I see that that game is still afoot over there. Um, but we shall prevail. It'll all work itself out. You just gotta put it in the mail and cross your fingers, and that's the way it is. It's never been a perfect game. I can't say that it was always, well, maybe it was a little bit better when I was growing up, but it's never been a perfect game. So we do what we have to, and we kind of adapt. And I hope you guys are adapting out there. Fingers are crossed. Yeah, me too, my friend. All right, guys, good night. I am going to bed, and so I will bid you adieu for the evening. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to show up. You could be watching Seinfeld reruns right now, but instead you decided to watch your buddy Mike ramble on for over an hour. And I do appreciate that. And I will do this again next week. You guys all take care of yourselves sincerely from the heart. Be good. And I will see you soon. Night, everybody.